This podcast is part of the Treksphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit Treksphere.com.
I did an intro thing for you guys.
Oh, boy.
I know that you've been hesitant to get a theme song, and so I was hoping I could change your mind.
We hate the idea, but go ahead.
Yeah. So imagine, some sort of, big band event sort of thing, or, America's Funniest Home Videos, that kind of big song. All right? Here we go.
Okay.
What makes Star Trek like it be, and not just crappy or quality TV that was made to boldly go? This is Jonathan and this is Paul, and I'm not really on the show at all, so let's move on with this intro. Pardon me, I'm sick. We judge the episodes that we see based on these criteria 3. First, is there science fiction integral to the episode? Second, is that science fiction presented in a unique or novel way? Third, is there an ethical or moral dilemma presented? And that's the premise of this show. It's the measure of an episode, as you know.
I love it. Of course, it's now the new opening to the show.
Right? Yeah.
That was great. I like that there's probably some sort of drum break or instrumental break while you're giving the criteria.
Right.
Right,
Yeah. Well,
great.
and Paul, with your composing skills, the fact that you know how to score,
Right?
yeah, get on it.
Go on.
I'm not following.
Oh, we don't even have to record the intro. Everything is done. That actually is kind of cool because we wouldn't have to say anything. We wouldn't have to say the intro every time now.
Right. But, I mean, that was one of the things that we talked about, that we didn't want to just have a pre-recorded one.
But I didn't, I never did the math that, we could kill two birds with one stone of having a musical intro and also having the intro, all the stuff we say at the beginning of each episode. That does not change.
Right. Right. Now, what I want to hear is you actually finding the chords that go with Jeremy's rendition.
Well, I guess we should say that this week we watched the original series, Season 1, Episode 13, The Conscience of the King, which I'm guessing is some sort of Shakespearean quote of some kind.
Well, you don't really have to guess, since they actually say the Shakespeare line of that in the episode.
Do they say that when, spoilers everybody, when the guy dies and she's obviously spouting some sort of Shakespearean thing that I understood zero of?
Yes.
Nothing.
She says the play is the thing wherein I'll trap the conscience of the king.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, lots to say about this episode. At least I have lots to say about this episode. Jeremy, I have to say, let me read the blurb.
Yep.
Kirk is one of the last survivors who can identify a mass killer who lurks among a Shakespearean troupe aboard the Enterprise. And I have to say that I'm happy and sad that this was the second episode that you are watching this, because I'm very sad because it really is not indicative of Star Trek at all. I actually don't know where this came from. It's such an anomalous episode.
Right. Well, I love the fact that, the 2 episodes that we've given Jeremy are chef's kiss and scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, I think we can not dance around this at all. I detested this episode. I want this time back. But I looked up to see how well it was received, and you can see this yourself. It's regarded as one of the best episodes of the original series.
No.
Yes.
What? Where?
Yeah, go look it up.
Disappointing.
Okay, I mean, I look up different things. Where did you see that?
Wikipedia, under the reception section.
Oh. All right. I mean, it's at least in the top 70. I will grant that.
It's because it has Shakespeare in it, and if you don't like Shakespeare, that makes you a hack. And so that was their method of getting this into the best received episode. Well, it has Shakespeare in it. That means you don't like Shakespeare.
Right.
Which means you have no taste. But the biggest tragedy, especially with this episode, a form of kicking me while I'm down, is that because I had to watch this on Amazon, there is no 1.5 speed.
Right.
And if there was ever an episode that needed 1.5 speed...
Yes.
Yeah, well, and I did the same thing I did this time as I did last time, which was I watched it twice because I want to see how it holds up if you know what's going to happen. How much does the episode sort of, work with all the context? And I watched it, ended up watching it more than that because I fell asleep twice.
Now, I have a question. Are you such a purist that you have to start it at the beginning? So you've watched the beginning 4 times, or did you pick up where you left off?
So, I tried to pick up where I left off, but of course, going to sleep is a process. It wasn't just like I knew exactly where I was.
Right.
I watched the end and I got to the end of it. It's sort of like when you read a paragraph on the page and you get to the end of the paragraph and you have no idea what just happened. The same thing happened to me basically for every scene because this episode, aside from it just kind of being boring, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
It makes no sense.
I don't want to get into the plot. It's basically they're
then you're on the wrong
randomly
show.
at this. I want to talk about your feelings. Basically, the quick and dirty plot is Kirk is trying to determine whether or not this old Shakespearean actor happens to be some sort of eugenicist, whatever you want to call him. And he sort of becomes obsessed and becomes very Machiavellian about trying to catch this man and prove that he is who he says he's not. And in the end, he kind of everybody overhears everybody in this episode somehow, but he overhears them confessing to each other, and it turns out to be him. So anyway,
but
the plot,
he's not the one who killed everybody. Like, he's not the one who wound up killing the 9 survivors, which is what kind of Kirk was expecting. Yeah.
So he's redeemed.
Right. So I know you're going to go a little bit further. One of the things that really threw me off was he was one of 9 witnesses to a governor who they had a photo of.
Right. That's in my notes here too.
They look exactly alike, and he's sort of like Kirk when he's looking at these 2 pictures. He's sort of going back and forth and like, I don't know, could go either way.
Well, and what about the 4,000 survivors?
That's a good point. They weren't dead though.
So they never saw the governor of their colony?
Well, they see him as a hero.
Well, so right? I saw this. Oh, maybe this is my own sort of post hoc thing, because this definitely wasn't mentioned in the episode. But like the way that I rationalized that almost immediately was that like the 4,000 people were killed separately. Like it does talk about how he separated the people. Well, so the 4,000 people just like weren't there for the killing. But now that I'm even saying that, like, even that's not a very good explanation, because it's now like a known part of history. These are still 4,000 people who survived and can still identify this guy.
Right.
That's a very good point.
So who are these 9 people?
Yeah. That's a great point. Who are they? Well, I guess maybe everybody else has died one way or another.
So the other 3,991 have died in some way, and they're the remaining 9?
The rescue ship blew up or something?
Right.
Or the daughter's been very busy.
Yeah.
Very busy.
And the dad is completely oblivious. Okay, go ahead.
So, I mean, Dr. Layton, the first guy that, suspects what's his name of being Kodos, he was disfigured. Why? Like, I mean, that seems really strange to me, because it's like he was executing people. That seems to me like that'd be a fairly clean process. How did the disfiguration happen?
Spock makes the point upon his research that they died painlessly, but they still died.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was maiming them
Right.
and then killing them.
Right.
But that kind of sucked me in. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. What was he doing to these people? And I actually kind of liked the vagueness of the beginning.
Yeah.
I liked that they weren't just handing out what the plot was. I regretted that later.
Well, because
5 minutes later.
They did. Right, yeah. Like, yes, these are the same people. Oh, but are they, though?
Yeah.
They wicked are, man.
Also, that character, the disfigured guy, you didn't need him.
No.
That was a whole preview or a whole section of the episode, this 48-minute episode, that did not need to be. Just have Kirk in the audience, hear the voice, and then say, I know who that is. That voice is so familiar. Like, you take that guy and Kirk and you combine them to make one character called Kirk.
But we needed a victim to show that these people were still being killed off.
I guess that's true. That's a good point.
But again, I don't know who these people are.
That's a really good point. Why, of these 9 people, are they singled out from the 4,000 that survived only 20 years ago? So it's unlikely they've all died of natural causes.
And can we talk about how crazy it is that a part of Kirk's history is that he survived a genocide?
Yeah.
Right?
Were any of you uncomfortable with the back and forth between the lady and Kirk?
Yes.
Every time.
Every single time it wasn't like, oh, Kirk really is a ladies' man. Like he's good at this. right? And aside from him manipulating her to get information, I couldn't tell if he was actually just manipulating her or if he was as earnest as he was supposed to be. I don't know. It felt so swarmy.
Well, that, and it also kind of felt like Lightning McQueen from Cars. And he's like, now all you have to do is just let me look at you.
Ka-chow.
Right? Like, it was just every scene with him, he's like, tell me about you. And just with this like goofy grin on his face that just, and she was giving it right back. Just the overexposure in this episode. And yeah.
I mean, at the end, she's full on crazy. And I don't think there's any reason to assume that the crazy just started right there at the end. So if you assume that she's crazy throughout the whole thing, it becomes a lot more, it makes a lot more sense, but it's also a lot more unsettling.
Well, I like the idea that he's manipulating her, but she's also trying to manipulate him to get close to him, to kill him, and also the other guy on the ship. They don't seed that in any way. There's no Chekhov's gun, and there's no Chekhov in this episode either.
Yeah, or Scott.
Yeah.
Or Sulu.
And no Sulu. No Sulu. Not really a Star Trek episode, I'm going to go out and say right off the bat.
No, very much not.
Well, and it's so weird that it's considered one. I mean, so kind of just reading what Jeremy was talking about. So there's people like this episode for the Spock and McCoy banter, but even that was very out of character, where McCoy is like, who cares? He's the captain. Have a drink with me.
My favorite version of Bones is Drunk Bones.
But this is the most chill he's ever been in all the episodes we've seen. Like, he's normally far more scrupulous.
Right. He's usually the one trying to convince other people that there's some sort of conspiracy going on.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's the one that's like, no, it's fine. Happens all the time.
Right?
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's this whole interlude with Uhura singing an entire song.
90 seconds.
Yeah. I kind of liked, I feel like I would have liked that scene without the song. It just totally killed the mood. It felt like they were trying to stretch their legs. Only 13 episodes into this show. This felt like a season 7 type of episode where, like, look, we're out of ideas. What do you want to do? Whatever you want to do, just go do it. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares anymore. But it wasn't. It was 13 episodes in, 12 if you count the crew that's actually there. So I don't understand what they were going for with this. Well, maybe there's some kind of grand Shakespearean metaphor happening or analogy happening that I'm not smart enough to get.
Could be. I mean, I thought the song was weird too. But that whole thing was like, Kevin's relationship with that milk was like the second most uncomfortable interaction on the episode. Like, first he can't find it. I don't know if you noticed that, but like he lifted up the tin thing to see if it was under there, but then he set down the tin and found it. And then he like rested his lip on it like he was tired. It was such a weird thing to do with a cup of milk.
They were trying to build some sort of tension. Like, is he or isn't he going to do it? And by doing things that humans don't do when they eat or drink.
Yep.
And then they use like a regular CVS like water squirter to poison him with.
Oh yeah. It's not like some kind of future squirter or anything. It's just like,
no.
Yeah, we can't improve on this technology. We tried. But it's so weird. Like, so, I mean, Kevin's only down there because he got, I guess, promoted to communications. I don't know if it's promotion, but it's, a job he wanted more. He thinks he's being punished by being put down there, which means he's bait. Like, Kirk did that to put him in some kind of danger and then set no trap. Like, this wasn't anything. Like, did he just not like Kevin?
This whole plan of Kirk's to help capture or find out if this is the real Kodos, why is he keeping it a secret?
Right.
I couldn't find any reason why it wasn't important to tell Spock, it wasn't important to tell Bones, or the entire ship to kind of keep a lookout on this guy, or to place a guard wherever. Like you said, don't set a trap. I feel like I'm missing a huge part of Kirk, I guess, why he would be doing this. This isn't the first time he's become obsessive. Why would he be lying, I guess?
He's also a jerk about it.
And every other time he's done it, he has explained what his reasoning is and what his thinking is. And, they're like, you're being irrational. And he says, am I though? And
good point. Never thought of it that way.
I mean, maybe this episode, again, watching him out of order, I don't remember, but maybe this episode comes before those, and he realized that he does need to share with his commanding officer what he's thinking and why he's doing it, rather than doing it without explaining it.
Right. And it felt very much like theater in the sense that when you have a conversation between two characters and it's implied that the other two characters on stage can't hear it. There's some sort of body language or the lights dim on one side, and it's clear that they're having an intimate conversation and not one that all the characters can hear. And that seems to be kind of what they were doing in this episode, because Kirk is doing his research on the bridge right next to Spock. And then Spock later does the exact same research that he confronts Kirk with. And could he hear him? Because the computer was reading off all of the information that we needed to know.
Right, with its megaphone PA.
Right. With like the 60s robot voice.
Yeah. Computer, I need some information, but keep it on the down low. What do you need?
This is just between us, right? Affirmative. It's like a Dalek.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly where it must have come from, right? Wait, what was first? Was Doctor Who first, or was this first?
Doctor Who must have been first. It was black and white at least.
Maybe they stole it from that. Because it's the same exact thing, right?
No, not quite.
It sounds almost the same.
Well, no, because Daleks have a much more like raspy.
Is that you, Strong Bad?
No, it's like Beavis doing a robot impression.
Yeah, so I don't know if they were trying to do kind of a play aesthetic or a theater aesthetic where everybody's in the room and they're going to stay there for the duration of the scene. Nobody leaves the scene or comes into a scene. They're just always there. Like, for example, when Kirk confronts Kodos, or who is ostensibly Kodos at the point in the plot, they're interrupted by his daughter. And the daughter comes in and she says, "Dad, you need to rest. Go in the back." And he goes behind like the screen and then continues to have a conversation with Kirk that he shouldn't have to hear or isn't hearing, or later we find out didn't hear.
Yeah.
It was weird, right? Like, nobody leave. It's almost like it was a play.
Well, and the fact that the camera followed him over to that screen and he just kind of stands there.
Right. He stands there doing, like, maybe he's taking off all of his jewelry.
Right, but I mean, in the shot, he's not doing anything. Like, he just goes over there and, he's like, okay, well, this is where the camera, or this is where the director told me to stand, so I'm going to stand here and wait until the scene is over.
His room made me laugh, though. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but it had all these swords around. And so my thought is one of two things. Either it's this very quick transport and he just decided to unpack his swords, or they gave him the room with the swords.
And he seems to always be in costume, no matter, like, he's walking, like, when he sees Kirk in that scene, he's wearing this kind of, like, 1300s cloak with with rabbit hair on it. I don't know why apple.
I get those two confused
how that's related
all
to
the time.
rabbit. Yeah, what a bizarre episode. Was there anything about this being some sort of weird novelty episode?
No, I mean, it is done in a very theatrical way. Like, the episode does play with Hamlet's broad strokes as well, like the daughter going crazy over the father's death, the main character having guilt over the loss of life beforehand. So there are Shakespearean tones to it, but there was nothing in my research that said, like, it is very much done for this reason or with this style.
By the way, can we talk about this really quick? So I happen to agree with Kodos and what he did.
Oh, so you're a Thanos sympathizer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Obviously, they don't really get into 100% of what the actual details were or in the scenario. But if he saved 4,000 lives by killing 4,000 other lives, otherwise they all would have died, isn't that better than all of them dying, I guess? I mean, it was a tough decision to make, but someone had to make it, right?
Well, let me ask you this. If there's a trolley going on a track towards 5 people, but you can pull a lever so that it only goes towards one person, that's the joke.
Yeah, you kill the one. You kill the one guy. Isn't that the obvious? I mean, that's the Spock way. The good of the many outweigh the good of the few.
Right, but you're happy to make that conscious choice of killing that person?
Well, I feel like if I do nothing, I'm killing other people. I feel like if I have the power to change something, whether my power being the lever that switches the track from the 4 people to the one person, I can be implicated in that.
Yeah.
morally.
So I actually, Paul, I do agree with you philosophically. I think that the action is the decision, not the lever.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I would pull the lever. I don't know. Does that make me bad? It seems like an obvious choice, I guess.
Well, but
Right?
it's
To a
funny too, 'cause
sociopath.
this question, like whichever side you fall on it, like it's the obvious choice to like there are people who will be like, no, of course I wouldn't pull the lever because like I have killed someone and otherwise I have not killed someone, and they feel like that's the obvious choice.
To me, the dilemma though is not the idea being in there from that perspective. If I do nothing, I've done nothing wrong, and I disagree with. I think that's the philosophical argument almost to me, is that just because you did nothing and you could have done something, that doesn't excuse that you did nothing.
Right.
Morally speaking.
Well, and that's the idea, yeah. But then Spider-Man would say,
Yep, pretty much, because he's a fake character, so he wouldn't say anything.
He is too.
with great power comes great responsibility. If you have to choose between killing one person and killing 5 people, which is really the choice.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't have to kill 4,000 people. He did not have to choose to kill the most amount of people immediately.
There was some sort of criteria that they implied he was following
Right.
to kill these people. So, and it's funny to go even further that this is not a very atypical Star Trek episode, is that Spock becomes very emotional and animated when recounting what happened to Bones.
Yeah.
And because he's kind of stopping him, he's leaning forward. He's obviously kind of excited about this story. And the whole episode is weird that way, in that it doesn't make sense from a plot standpoint, from a writing standpoint, from a character standpoint.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why are phasers so loud?
Well, and how could they not find the source?
Right. But like you hear the sound and Spock is like that low hum and it's like this high screech.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because there's really not that much for us to sink our teeth into, just because it's almost kind of this weird farcical pretend episode.
And there's no sci-fi. There's no
zero
sci.
sci-fi.
Like they talk about transporting, but like I guess this episode had 0 special effects budget because we don't see any of it. Like it's just it all happens off camera.
The only thing that I can remember is when the daughter shoots the dad,
Yeah.
shoots Kodos.
Yeah, no new sets were built.
I guess the other thing we can talk about is what the hell was Kevin eating? Is that
Legos.
that's what it looked like? But he gets a glass of milk.
Well, yeah, what else are you going to wash it down with?
I guess so, and he didn't eat any of it.
He died.
I feel like this would have been a good episode just if there'd been more of a struggle with finding out who the killer was.
Right.
Maybe they had no idea who Kodos was. It just seemed, and the only person who knew was now dead. And so now it was a matter of trying to figure out who in the theatrical troupe was Kodos.
Or if he wasn't Kodos. Like
Yeah, that would have been
that
great.
would have been an interesting twist.
Yeah.
One thing I will say actually very positively about this episode is that the Star Trek theme was used very effectively as a motif quite a few times.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the romance soundtrack. There was at the party, it was like jazzed up for.
It was like lounge jazzy.
Yeah,
it
it was
very
really cool.
interesting. Yeah,
But what that also means is that the Star Trek theme is actually part of the Star Trek universe.
I'm fine with
good
that.
point.
Oh yeah, no. It's just, but that means like all of those scenes, of like the behind the scenes stuff where Riker is finishing his button before the cold open or before the intro, and he stands there for a moment and it goes ba 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 ba, like
Right.
that is Riker actually singing a song that he knows.
Got
That
it.
would be amazing, and then it
makes sense.
comes back and he's like bam ba 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 bam.
Because normally it's actually very kind of atonal music. It's not that hummable throughout the entire episode. It's usually very kind of, movie music.
I felt it was done very effectively, which is why I'm not really all that bothered. Like it sounded like a romance theme. It sounded jazzy, loungy, all that stuff. It was, I don't know, good.
Yeah. The music is always good in this show.
So I'm just realizing something. There was that episode of Next Generation where they met that void face guy.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the whole premise of that was that guy was going to kill half the crew, and so Picard was going to kill all of them.
Yep. Good point.
Well, yeah, like this is the episode of what if Nagilum didn't stop them?
Yeah.
And
Which is the better choice. You're going to kill half the people? No, won't have any of that. We're going to kill everybody.
Take
I
that.
didn't think about that.
I guess the philosophical dilemma is when half of the people will die, is it better to kill all of them, or when you know all of the people will die, is it better to kill half of them?
Well, when Nagilum said, I'm going to kill about half the crew, Picard's next line should have been, can I choose which ones?
Because I've got a list ready.
Right.
I'm way ahead of you.
Nagilum,
Yeah.
I'm so glad we met.
Maybe we're just that's the thing we're missing, is that, a lot of television was this sort of clunky and awkward.
This is where television in general was still getting its bearings and, understanding what was and wasn't good TV. But even still, like, just every scene with the two of them together, it just felt even more forced than when Kirk married that Native American gal.
What are the women on Earth like?
What a strange question.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
And her accent, too, like the transatlantic accent that she kept on slipping in and out of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if she was Scandinavian or something. Like it kind of went in and out, like you said.
Oh, and sorry, I have a couple more things. So the exploding phaser or whatever, he's like, it's gonna blow the whole deck. And then the rest of the ship, this is a spaceship in space, it will implode. That's what happens.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, I like that his solution was not to deactivate the phaser, but to put it down the laundry chute.
Yeah. Somebody else's problem.
This will finally get Kevin.
Don't worry, Kodos, I got you.
Right. Yeah, I was actually expecting when Kevin overhears McCoy and they're like, I thought, because the episode was over, they found out who he was. I thought the episode was going to be, and I was like, oh, there's 12 more minutes left in this episode.
Why?
And then that whole scene where Kevin overhears the doctor making his log.
Ear pressed against the bathroom door.
I hear it. I heard it.
Man, Kevin's a creeper.
Why do you think you keep getting demoted? Stop doing that.
Back to engineering for you.
This whole thing, I thought he was going to go kill him, and that was going to be the tragedy of everything, was that this guy finally gets to avenge his father, and that was going to be the thing, but that doesn't happen.
Paul?
Like, that seemed like a way better ending to me.
Well, and then it turns out to not be Kodos.
Oh, yeah, that's even better.
Yeah.
So was it obvious to anybody if Kirk, because Kirk later says that I wasn't just trying to manipulate you, lady, that eventually I was falling in love with you. Was that true?
I don't see how. They've been on a date and a half. Like, it's, I don't know.
Well, I don't think that Kirk knew that when she first walks into the cocktail party, that was Kodos's daughter. He just kind of has a reaction to her that she's a pretty girl. He says to her, can I get you a drink? She says, of course. And then he just hands her his drink.
Well, yeah, she's like, she says something like, is that for me? And he goes, why not? Like,
oh, you're 19? Okay, I'll be taking that back.
right.
The part that really struck me is being a thing that's like, this felt like a fan script, but like particularly like a juvenile fan script. Like this was going to be some sort of middle school talent show production kind of thing. Was when the phaser was about to explode, and he says, "Double red alert." Like, what color is double red?
Right.
I looked it up to see if this was even a thing. If you do a search for double red alert, it's like a Star Trek wiki that comes up, and it's like, this is the only entry, this is the only episode where it happens, and it's supposed to convey a greater sense of urgency, but the alarms and sounds, the sirens, all that kind of stuff, are the same as a red alert. So I don't know how it's supposed to convey a greater sense of urgency.
The idea of a double red alert, I would think, would be like abandoned ship. Right? You have red alert. That means we're in total peril. Shields up. Everybody at the battle stations, run to wherever you have to go. That's usually red alert in the show. So double red alert is like, well, the ship is going to explode in a very short amount of time. So if you can make it, Godspeed.
Yeah, but I agree with Jeremy that it is very much like an 8-year-old wrote this. They're like, what's bigger than red alert?
And just not very succinct of an episode. They didn't say anything to each other. Everything was just this innuendo of sex. So all of these scenes, which were minutes and minutes long, that could have been cut down or at least made interesting by having them at least seeding something, having her imply something that comes back later, just something that he remembers, that, oh, she said this, that doesn't make any sense. And then he puts the pieces together. It's just, I agree with you, Jeremy. Like it feels very overwritten and in a way that implies inexperience.
Which is interesting, too, because, if you think back, like it has kind of the same procedural element as Operation Annihilate, but we were given new information in every scene. And I think that that's the biggest difference, kind of just, again, speaking to Jeremy's point, that there were so many scenes where they went on for minutes and either nothing was explained or there was one thing introduced in that scene and the scene continued to go on.
Yeah. I hated this episode. I was so bummed out when I saw it was 48 minutes long.
I kept, because I watched it on Hulu, which also doesn't have 1.5 speed, I kept looking at the timer and being like, how do we still have 27 minutes left? How is there 23 minutes left?
How did only 23 seconds just pass?
Yeah, and I can't, if I did this Jeremy's way, where it was like, well, now I gotta watch it again, like...
Although I do appreciate the want to be prepared. I do like that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how we like our guest stars.
Yeah.
Plural, guest stars.
Guest hosts. You're a star. You are a star, especially after the number at the front.
Well, thanks.
At the front?
Oh, the show number? Okay, the musical number? Okay,
show number,
okay.
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
yes, to Jeremy. Thank you. Like, what do you mean the number at the front?
I don't know. What else can we talk about?
Something else?
Yeah, so we all agree, not a Star Trek episode.
So no science fiction, and therefore no science fiction presented in a unique or novel way. Moral dilemma, they tried to get there with Kirk being conflicted about whether or not this is even Kodos, but they spent so much time giving all his evidence only in one direction that this just didn't, it fell totally flat. Like, there was no reason to think that it would be anyone else, and then it wasn't.
Right. It would have been interesting if it turned out to be the daughter who had orchestrated everything, including the murder of the 4,000 people.
And he was like protecting her?
Yeah.
Or that Kodos was the daughter. Even that he changed himself, that the picture of Kodos and the picture of Anton were totally different people. The fact that they were exactly the same person, just 20 years younger, I don't know, there was no mystery in this episode.
No, not
right.
at all.
Like, maybe that wasn't the point, but I thought this was a Star Trek science fiction show.
Right. Yeah, I'm still flabbergasted that people consider this one of the top 10 best of the original Star Trek series.
I know. Yeah.
No.
It was so many characters were out of character. The plot was so thin. The reveal was given at the very end. Again, they talked about the banter between the Doctor and Spock, but it just, even that was out of character. Like, why would you consider this one of the top 10 best? That is so. Listeners, if you consider this one of the top 10 best, let us know why you think so. After everything we've said, what else about this episode did we miss that makes it so great?
So I watched the, what do they call it? Remastered one. Did you guys watch the remastered or just the regular one? On Amazon, they give you a choice.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
No, on Hulu they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe the unremastered one.
That makes all the difference.
So the remaster somehow just like made it dramatically worse.
Yeah. All the detail that we glean from the remastering just ruins it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All those special effects that they did up.
Well, I guess should we see what we're watching next?
Yeah. The Fight. Episode 18 of Season 5 of Voyager. Oh, sorry, it's a Star Trek episode, by the way. And the blurb says, on Hulu, the blurb says, an alien race chooses to communicate with Voyager through Chakotay on the holodeck.
It sounds lame, but I'm happy to have it.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully it's mindless fun.
Just out of curiosity, so Jeremy, knowing nothing, I'm assuming, about Voyager, what does this episode sound like to you? What was your reaction?
I wasn't listening.
I wouldn't have been either. Okay, I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And I'm Jeremy.
This has been The Measure of an Episode.
As you knew!